Walk to your bathroom, open the drawer, find that small blue jar you have had for years, Vaseline. Almost every home in America owns one, and almost nobody uses it correctly. The American Academy of Dermatology quietly considers it one of the most powerful barrier repair tools ever made. It reduces water loss from your skin by up to 99%. Nothing on a department store shelf beats that number. And yet, in my clinic, I see patients whose nightly Vaseline routine is aging them faster, not slower. The problem is not the jar, it is the 10 invisible mistakes. The first mistake is the one you probably made this morning without realizing it. You reached for that jar after washing your face, waited a minute or two while you brushed your teeth, and then smoothed a small amount across your cheeks and forehead onto completely dry skin. It felt smooth, it looked shiny. You thought you had just done something good for your wrinkles, but here is what actually happened at the cellular level, and this is the part almost nobody explains correctly, even the dermatologists you see quoted online. Petrolatum is not a moisturizer. Let me repeat that, because it is the most misunderstood fact in modern skincare. Petrolatum does not add water to your skin. It does not draw water into your skin. It has no humectant properties whatsoever. What it does is form an occlusive seal, a thin, invisible film across the surface of your stratum corneum, the very top layer of your face. And that seal has exactly one job. It traps whatever is already there. So when you apply it to dry skin, you are sealing in dryness. You are locking a desert underneath a roof. Think of your skin as a brick wall. The bricks are your skin cells. The mortar between them is a fragile mixture of lipids and water. When that mortar dries out, the wall cracks. Fine lines deepen, texture roughens, sensitivity climbs. Petrolatum is the waterproof roof over that wall. A roof is essential, but a roof over a wall with no mortar underneath just preserves the damage. That is the first mistake, applying to dry skin instead of damp skin. If your face is not slightly moist from water, from a hydrating toner, from a serum with hyaluronic acid or glycerin, the petrolatum has nothing to lock in. You are wasting the entire mechanism. The second mistake is worse, and it is more common than you think. Applying petrolatum over uncleansed skin. I see patients who put Vaseline on their face before bed. On nights they are too tired to wash. They think they are being gentle. They are actually spending 8 hours trapping the day's sunscreen, sweat, sebum, and dead cell buildup against their pores. Petrolatum does not clog pores. Medical grade white petrolatum is officially rated non-comedogenic by the AAD, but it will absolutely lock whatever is underneath it against your face for the entire night. That is not skincare. That is a bacterial incubator pressed to your cheek by a pillow. The third mistake is treating petrolatum as a moisturizer rather than a sealer. This is where the internet has done tremendous damage. People are using Vaseline as their only nighttime product. No cleanser, no serum, no cream, just a thick layer of jelly. And then they wonder why their skin looks worse after 3 weeks. It looks worse because their skin is starving. The barrier is intact on the surface, but nothing underneath is being fed. No antioxidants, no peptides, no ceramides, no niacinamide. Just a sealed, empty room. Now, here is where the story gets uncomfortable because I need you to think about the origin of your beliefs about this product. Vaseline was patented in 1872 by Robert Chesebro, who reportedly ate a spoonful of it daily to prove it was safe. For over 100 years, it was the standard treatment for chapped skin, minor burns, and post-surgical wounds in hospitals across the country. Then, sometime in the last 20 years, the wellness industry decided petroleum was evil. Blogs began citing scores from advocacy databases that were designed for industrial-grade petroleum. not for the highly refined pharmaceutical grade white petrolatum sitting in that blue jar. The panic became a marketing opportunity. Boutique brands started selling $12 plant-based alternatives that perform worse on every clinical measure of barrier function. The result is a generation of people who either fear the product entirely or use it with almost religious enthusiasm and no understanding of how it works. Both groups are missing what dermatologists actually know. White petrolatum is inert. It does not oxidize. It does not penetrate past the stratum corneum. It cannot enter your bloodstream. It does not disrupt hormones. It is biochemically one of the safest and most effective substances your skin can encounter. But safe does not mean automatically helpful. That is the contradiction at the center of this entire conversation. The same jar that saves a burn victim's skin can quietly worsen your wrinkles if you do not respect what it is and what it is not. It is a shield, not a food, a roof, not a foundation, a final step, not a first step, and you have seen the results of misuse without recognizing them. That patch of dryness that appeared under your eye after weeks of nightly Vaseline. Those tiny hard bumps along your temple you assumed were age. That deeper crease across your forehead that did not soften the way you expected. These are not signs that the product failed. They are signs the product was placed against the wrong surface, at the wrong moment, in the wrong sequence. Because there is a fourth mistake, and this is the one that turns petrolatum from a wrinkle helper into a wrinkle accelerator. It is the mistake that combines with a specific category of ingredient you almost certainly have in your bathroom right now, and the interaction between them is doing something to your skin that no dermatologist warned you about. The ingredient category is retinoids. Retinol, tretinoin, adipalene, the gold standard of anti-aging medicine. If you use one of these, you already know they can cause peeling, redness, and stinging during the first weeks. So a reasonable idea has spread across social media. Seal your retinoid in with Vaseline to reduce the irritation. Layer the jelly on top and let it protect your face, while the active does its work overnight. The logic sounds sound. The clinical outcome is the opposite of what people expect. Petrolatum does not neutralize a retinoid. It does not calm it. What it does is trap the molecule against your skin and slow its normal evaporation and dilution. In dermatology, this is called enhanced penetration, and for a prescription strength active, it is not a bonus. It is a dose increase you never agreed to. Your tretinoin becomes stronger. Your barrier, already thinned by the retinoid, gets even more disrupted. The redness deepens, the peeling extends, and the fine lines you were trying to soften begin to look more etched because the surrounding skin is inflamed. That is mistake number 4, slugging over active ingredients. And it does not only apply to retinoids, it applies to alpha hydroxy acids like glycolic and lactic, beta hydroxy acids like salicylic, and to benzoyl peroxide for acne. Any of these under a petrolatum seal becomes something more aggressive than the label intended. The correct approach, if you want to combine them at all, is to wait a full 30 minutes after applying the active, let it absorb and finish its initial reaction, then apply a proper moisturizer, and only then, on selected areas, the petrolatum. Mistake number 5 is closely related, and I see it in younger patients almost weekly. Using Vaseline on inflamed acne skin. Someone with active cystic breakouts hears that petrolatum is non-comedogenic, decides the internet was wrong about it clogging pores, and starts sealing their whole face nightly. The problem is not comedogenicity. The problem is heat and bacteria, active acne lesions are already inflamed, already colonized by Cutibacterium acnes, already producing excess sebum in a warm and moist environment. When you seal that environment with an occlusive, you raise the local temperature slightly, prevent normal transepidermal evaporation, and give the bacteria an even better place to multiply. The pimples do not clog worse, they deepen, they become more painful, they take longer to heal, and leave darker post-inflammatory marks. Mistake number 6. Applying petrolatum to freshly exfoliated skin without a proper buffer. If you just used a physical scrub, a peeling pad, a chemical exfoliant, or came home from a professional treatment, your stratum corneum is thinner and more permeable than usual. Sealing it immediately with Vaseline does exactly what it did with the retinoid. It amplifies whatever residual acid or friction is still on the surface, and it prevents the skin from completing its normal recovery cycle. Wait until the tingling has fully stopped. Apply a hydrating serum and a ceramide-rich moisturizer first, and only then, if at all, add a thin occlusive on top. Mistake number 7 shows up around the eyes, and it is subtle enough that most people never connect it to the jar. Melia, those tiny hard white bumps that appear along the orbital bone, on the eyelid, sometimes at the outer corner. Patients bring them to me thinking they are stubborn whiteheads or a sign of aging. In many cases, they are trapped keratin cysts, and in some patients, they are provoked or worsened by heavy occlusion of very thin skin. The skin around the eye is roughly a third the thickness of the skin on your cheek. It cannot shed cells the same way. Nightly heavy petrolatum around the eyes in someone predisposed to melia can slow that shedding just enough to matter. Not everyone will develop them, but if you have noticed them appearing since you started using Vaseline around your eyes, that connection is real. Now, I want to zoom out with you because the 7 mistakes we have covered so far all share a common mechanism, and that mechanism is the reason petrolatum is either the best or the worst thing in your routine. Dermatology has a name for the slow, silent background process that ages skin faster than almost anything else. Inflammaging, chronic, low-grade, often invisible inflammation. It is what happens when your barrier is compromised day after day, when your skin is fighting small battles you cannot see, when the mortar between your bricks is never given enough time to rebuild before the next stressor arrives. Inflammaging is what actually creates the difference between a face that looks its age at 50 and a face that looks a decade younger. It is not just collagen loss. It is chronic irritation quietly cooking the collagen you still have. And here is the reinterpretation that changes everything I told you in the first section. Correctly used petrolatum interrupts inflammaging. It gives your barrier uninterrupted hours to rebuild lipids, retain water, and calm down. That is why dermatologists genuinely recommend it. That is why post-procedure patients heal faster with it. That is why the wrinkle benefit is real. It is not because petrolatum stimulates collagen, it cannot. It is because it protects the collagen you have from being degraded by chronic barrier disruption. But incorrectly used, it does the opposite. It becomes another source of chronic low-grade inflammation, trapped bacteria, amplified actives, milia, suffocated acne. Every mistake we have discussed accelerates the very process the product is capable of stopping, which is why the same jar can plump a 45-year-old's forehead lines within a week and trigger perioral dermatitis in a 25-year-old within the same week. Same product, same molecule, opposite outcomes. The variable is not the Vaseline. The variable is everything underneath it and every decision made before it touched the face. And now we come to the last 3 mistakes. The mistakes dermatologists say age skin faster over years than a single afternoon of unprotected sun. Mistake number 8 is the one I have to explain slowly because almost no one connects it to their pillow. Sleeping in petrolatum on a dirty pillowcase. If you slug your face at night and sleep on a cotton pillowcase you have not changed in a week, you are pressing your sealed occlusive layer directly into a fabric, saturated with hair oils, saliva, dust mite particles, and residual product from previous nights. That fabric transfers back into the petrolatum, which is now acting as an adhesive against your cheek, your temple, the fold beside your nose. In the morning, you have not simply slept in Vaseline. You have slept in a reservoir of everything that pillowcase collected, held tight against your face by the very seal you thought was protecting you. Change your pillowcase every 2 to 3 nights if you slug, and consider silk or a smooth cotton weave that shed less debris. Mistake number 9 is the one that makes dermatologists genuinely worried because it is often driven by good intentions. Using Vaseline as a substitute for sunscreen. I have had patients tell me they read online that petrolatum forms a protective barrier and therefore blocks the sun. Let me be as clear as I can. Petrolatum has no sun protection factor, zero. It is not registered by the FDA as a sunscreen. It does not absorb ultraviolet radiation. It does not reflect it. If you are relying on Vaseline instead of sunscreen, you are unprotected, and you are aging in real time from photo damage that no nighttime routine can reverse. Mistake number 10 is subtle but widespread, confusing petroleum jelly with petroleum scented products that share the aesthetic but not the safety profile. Walk down the body care aisle and you will see dozens of jars, sticks, and tubs labeled as healing balms, wrinkle salves, and overnight masks that contain petrolatum somewhere on the label, but also contain fragrance, essential oils, alcohol, botanical extracts, or preservatives that white petrolatum from the plain jar does not. If your skin is sensitive, reactive, or barrier compromised, those additives can undo everything the petrolatum was supposed to accomplish. The plain, unscented, single ingredient jar remains one of the cleanest products in your bathroom. The scented versions are cosmetics with a marketing story. So now you understand the 10 mistakes. Let me give you the correct evening protocol because knowing what not to do is only useful if you know what to do instead. Cleanse your face first with a gentle, non-stripping cleanser. Pat. Do not rub until your skin is damp but not dripping. Apply a hydrating layer next. This can be a humectant serum with hyaluronic acid or glycerin, or a hydrating toner or essence if you prefer. This is the water you are about to seal in. If you use an active ingredient, this is the moment. Retinoid, exfoliating acid, or targeted treatment. Then you wait. A full 20 to 30 minutes if you can manage it. Let the active absorb, react, and stabilize. Apply your regular moisturizer, ideally one with ceramides, cholesterol, and fatty acids that actually rebuild the barrier lipids. And finally, only then, and only on the areas where you want the wrinkle benefit, apply a thin layer of white petrolatum, cheeks, forehead, nasolabial folds, the fine lines around the mouth, not the eyelids if you are prone to melia, not the T-zone if you are acne prone, not the entire face if you have not tested how your skin responds. That is the routine that actually delivers the benefit the product is capable of. And now, let me draw the honest lines dermatology draws. What is clinically proven? Petrolatum reduces water loss from your skin better than nearly any other single ingredient. It supports barrier repair. It is officially non-comedogenic when the medical grade white version is used. It is one of the safest topical products ever studied. What is strongly supported? Slugging, when done correctly on a supported routine, improves barrier function in compromised skin and softens the appearance of fine lines through hydration and protection from chronic irritation. What dermatologists generally recommend: Petrolatum is excellent for post-procedure recovery, for very dry skin, for eczema flares, for wound healing, and as an occasional or nightly sealer for aging skin that is not acne-prone, where legitimate debate exists whether nightly slugging is appropriate for oily or acne-prone skin, whether petrolatum should be used at all around the eyes, whether the benefit for wrinkles is meaningful enough to bother with, given individual variation, and what is simply marketing or folklore, that Vaseline erases wrinkles, that it causes cancer, that it universally clogs pores, that it disrupts hormones, that it feeds the skin. None of these claims are supported by real dermatological evidence. So return with me to that small blue jar. It is still sitting quietly in your bathroom drawer. Nothing about the jar itself has changed. What has changed is the meaning of the jar. It is not a miracle. It is not a menace. It is a $4 clinical tool that has been available to you for a century, and its effect on your wrinkles depends entirely on what you put underneath it and when you reach for it. Vaseline will change your wrinkle skin. That much is honest. But it will only change it in the direction you want if you treat it as the last step of a supported routine, not the routine itself. It is a roof. It works when the walls are strong and the mortar is fresh. So tonight, before you smooth another layer across your face, ask yourself one question. When you applied it last night, what was underneath it? And was your skin damp, clean, and free of actives? Because that question and your answer is the difference between a jar that quietly ages your skin and a jar that quietly saves it.